Welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo. Coming up on the show this week, we don the super suit and leap into Crysis 2.
And The Sims is back, but it's travelled back in time. We check out The Sims Medieval.
We do a backwards compatible on 3D gaming and have a look at the 3DS.
And Fanboys vs. Haters is back for some lovin' and some hatin' on the Final Fantasy series. But before all that, can you guess the game for this week?
Read my mind.
Good game.
Duke Nukem Forever has been delayed again. However, we won't have to wait too much longer this time, probably.
Nothing can stop us now. I mean, not even Duke Nukem himself can get in our way.
Gearbox Software originally announced the long-delayed Duke would be out in May of this year, but has moved the release back just a month to June 10th.
Did you think I was gone forever?
We reported earlier in the year on Ashley Mitchell, a 29-year-old British hacker who stole 400 billion virtual betting chips from Farmville creators Zynga. Mitchell pleaded guilty and has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for the virtual heist. Zynga estimated the virtual chips to be worth $12 million, but Mitchell was only able to make approximately $100,000 profit before being caught. Meanwhile, a much more benevolent hacker, or White Hat as they're known, has helped Tryon Worlds fix a security hole in their newly released MMO, Rift. A user under the alias Man with the Plan discovered a vulnerability which would allow user accounts to be accessed without needing their login information. After alerting Tryon Worlds to the issue on their forum, the studio verified the exploit and issued a fix within hours and gave their heartfelt thanks to Man with the Plan. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was only recently released on PC, and those who bought the digital deluxe edition received the game's soundtrack as a bonus. However, it would appear that Ubisoft is using a pirated version of their own soundtrack. One eagle-eyed user noticed the tracks had been encoded by a user known as Arsa13, the same alias attached to illegal copies of the soundtrack found online. Ubisoft is investigating the matter.
Good game.
I bid you good morrow, Lord Badgington.
Ah, Lady Hexavere, prithee begin the Sims Medieval review.
Yea, verily. Mayhap thou knowest of previous
I
follies.
just cannot speak like this for the whole review, by the way.
Yeah, alright. Look, Barger, The Sims is one of those franchises that I never really got into. I mean, I enjoyed the city builders back in the day, and I had a decent go of The Sims 3, but I don't know, this is one of those franchises that's had so many add-ons and expansions, it all got quite ridiculous.
Salabefrim.
So when I heard that there was a new Sims game, The Sims Medieval, I figured, well, sure, I like swords and stuff, but isn't this just the same game set in a different time period?
Div Jorek Rennick. Sapel Fal Sim Javen.
Well, the answer is no, not at all.
In this ye olde jaunt into life simulation, you'll be controlling your Sims in their everyday lives. But rather than being able to control any old Sim in your kingdom, you'll be focusing on hero Sims. These Sims each have a specific profession and are in charge of a particular building. You'll begin with your first hero, the Monarch, and begin duties as a king or queen of the land.
The game has taken on much more of an RPG formula, as you'll be using your Sims to gain XP and complete a series of quests. You still need to keep them fed and well rested, but you don't have to worry about making sure they're always having fun or going to the bathroom like in previous games, which is such a relief because I always found that so mind-numbingly boring. I mean, I even find feeding them to be a little bit annoying. Where's the auto-eat function? Seriously.
Of course, when you create your Sim, you'll have a huge range of character customization options. Plus, you can also pick personality traits, which affect how your Sims perform certain tasks. You get 2 traits and a fatal flaw.
I loved this. My Monarch, Lady Snooty Pants, I gave her the trait of vanity. Which meant that every time she checked herself out in the mirror, she got a positive buff from it, which would add to her focus. My absolute favourite, though, was my wizard, Peroxidius Malfoy. I found this bizarre trait for him called Whale Ate My Parents, which means that he suffered constantly from the traumatic memory of his parents being eaten by a whale.
Desadin. Preskel.
In order to stop this, I had to unload my whale story on another Sim, which would then satiate my whale rage. But I'd also unwittingly given him the fatal flaw of misanthrope, so he hated talking to people and I'd end up with a different negative buff from that. It was crazy.
You think you have it all under control, but there's a lot going on at once. Quests are long, drawn-out affairs that involve a lot of travelling about and interacting with people, shopping, fishing, playing songs, or writing royal documents. But throughout this, you have to make sure your Sims are still getting food and rest, or they'll lose focus and fail their quest objectives.
Yeah, and on top of this, you're also given 2 9 AM focus tasks every day to complete, which will give you a positive buff. If you don't complete them in time, however, you'll get lumped with a negative buff and you'll have to make up that focus in other ways. And this slows your progress down. It's a constant juggling act.
You can still fast forward time, which you need to use quite a lot, especially when you're traversing the extensive landscape, which just looks beautiful. As you go adding new structures and buildings to your kingdom, it really starts to feel like a fully fleshed out world, and it's wonderful watching that grow.
Character interactions between Sims are still as fun and humorous as ever. Your Sims can flirt, fight, get married, gossip, discuss art and religion, and as Queen I enjoyed sending poor souls to the stocks to get pelted with food. Or to the pit, where they'd get devoured by the merciless pit monster.
I find it a bit weird that some things you do don't get any sort of reaction though. For example, your Sims are always getting tired, so it's just convenient to crash on the nearest mattress available. But at one point my evil priest got into the Queen's bed and then moments later she just got in right after me without really caring. I feel like the Queen would care if an evil priest is in her bed.
You know what? She's used to it, man. She's had to deal with people peeing in front of her.
As you level up, your Sim's skills will improve, which allows you to make better choices as to which Sim you want to take on a quest, and it can be quite tricky juggling this. The RPG element is even extended to a very WoW-esque function of mining for minerals or picking herbs and flowers. You can sell these items for cash, or your Wizard Sim can use them in spells.
There's focus buffs to be had everywhere though to make questing a little bit easier. For example, locating ingredients for a more interesting meal will keep your Sim happy, and a nicely decorated home will have a positive effect as well.
You can't build your home from the ground up anymore though, which is a shame, and I think if you loved that feature from the last game, then you'll be disappointed that it's not there. Personally, it wasn't really that big a deal for me though, because I'd always just move a bit of furniture around and change the colours, so I was kind of happy with that.
Yeah, you don't start out with much money though, and all of the buildings are already so well furnished that all I felt like I was doing was just adding a candlestick here and there.
The game looks great, and it's wonderfully detailed up close too. And I love these picturesque views of watching your Sim just sitting in their home, you know, the reflection in the mirror, and it's quite fun just to observe. You have the camera option to follow your active Sim, and that's great, but I found sometimes the camera would fight the scenery, and that got frustrating.
And I also found it a little bit silly that whenever your Sim goes off to hunt in a forest, you don't actually get to see any of that action. They just disappear and then time lapses until they come out. Especially Snooty Pants, one of her traits was adventurer, so she was always wanting to go off into the woods, and whenever that happened, I kind of felt like I was missing out.
You know, despite days of gaming in this, I still feel like we haven't even scratched the surface, Hex.
Yeah, look, it's slow-moving progress, but it's actually really addictive. I think with the questing and the RPG elements that they've added to the game, it was a lot more involving for me, and I just keep wanting to get more Sims that I could customize and control and just expand my kingdom. It really didn't feel as frivolous or superficial as I found other games in this series, and I really enjoyed it. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
You know, I never think I'm going to enjoy a Sims game. I go, oh, another Sims game. But the moment I start playing, I actually end up having a really good time, and it just sucks those hours away. And I think they've taken some clever steps here to reinvent the series a bit and make it a more sophisticated game. So if you're sick of The Sims, it might bring you back. But if you love The Sims, I think there's enough new here to keep you interested. So I'm giving it 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
When people talk about the history of true 3D gaming, one of the first things mentioned is usually the Nintendo Virtual Boy, released in 1995. But the real story starts much earlier in 1982 with the release of a game called Sub-Rock 3D by Sega. The game itself wasn't 3D, but the special cabinet that housed the game gave it a 3D effect. To play Sub-Rock 3D, you had to look through a special eyepiece that featured a spinning disc that would alternate slightly offset left and right images to give the impression of a 3D depth of field. 1983 saw the first home console venture into the realm of 3D with the Vectrex 3D Imager. The Imager used a similar rotating disc technology to the Sub-Rock arcade machine, but also added colour panels to the rotating disc to supply the colour that was usually added to the game by the transparent screen overlays. In 1987, Sega once again revolutionised 3D gaming with the release of these 3D LCD shutter glasses for the Sega Master System. Each lens of the glasses contains liquid crystals that darken when the charge is passed through it. These flicker in time with the refresh rate of the screen to show a slightly different perspective out of each eye, giving the impression of depth. Nintendo also released a pair of LCD shutter glasses for the NES around the same time. Games such as Zaxxon 3D, World Runner 3D, Outrun 3D, and Rad Racer made 3D glasses for both manufacturers quite popular. But ultimately the cost, noticeable flickering, and the fact that all games look like you're playing them wearing sunglasses, and a limited catalogue of games, 8 for the Mega Drive and 7 for the NES, saw both sets of glasses being discontinued in 1989. Around the same time, many developers started adding an anaglyph mode to their games. Anaglyph 3D uses two slightly offset images tinted with chromatically opposite colours. While the 3D effect of anaglyph isn't as effective as shutter glasses, it's far more cost effective as it doesn't require special technology to make it work, meaning that game developers still use it today with games like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Minecraft, and Skate 2 featuring anaglyph modes. After their LCD 3D glasses and before the Virtual Boy, Nintendo had one other stab at 3D with the game Orb 3D in 1991. Unlike previous games, Orb used a 3D technique called the pull frick effect. The technique uses glasses with one darkly tinted lens and one clear lens. The different tints cause each eye to process information at different speeds, creating the illusion of depth.
Hologram, the time travel fantasy where you journey through the centuries on a perilous quest to rescue the beautiful princess.
1991 also saw the launch of another innovative arcade machine by Sega, Hologram Time Traveler, created by Rick Dyer, the designer of Dragon's Lair. It utilised a large curved mirror to reflect a standard CRT screen.
These challenges and more await you should you dare to enter the world of Hologram.
The game was immensely successful, but the laserdiscs that stored the game proved to be unreliable. In 1992, Sega released a fighting game, Holosseum, for the arcade machine, but the format was soon dumped. 1994 saw the release of the 3D flying shoot-'em-up for PC, Magic Carpet, the brainchild of hyperbole-prone gaming visionary Peter Molyneux. The game was critically acclaimed, not only for being fun, but for being truly ahead of its time due to its cutting-edge 3D engine that included such advances as dynamic lighting, particle effects, and mouse look. It's also rather infamous in 3D gaming circles as it featured not only an anaglyph mode, but an auto-stereogram mode as well. Auto-stereograms are better known to the world as magic eye images, a seemingly random array of dots that resolve into an image if you can focus your eyes correctly. Seeing a still magic eye image is hard for a lot of people, but trying to make something out of this is a headache waiting to happen. And finally, we get to the Virtual Boy, released and subsequently discontinued in 1995. Although the system is justifiably considered an abject failure, if not an unholy abomination thanks to the uncomfortable, neck-straining way you had to look at the screen and the headache-inducing red graphics, it's an important piece of technology due to the fact that it was the first console built solely around the concept of 3D gaming, an idea that Nintendo is now banking on with the 3DS. In recent years, Sony and the PS3 have started championing the cause of 3D with many AAA titles, such as Killzone 3, MotorStorm Apocalypse, Gran Turismo 5, and Call of Duty Black Ops featuring 3D modes. Modern 3D gaming utilises the same technology as 3D film, with the use of polarised lenses that can filter out certain wavelengths of light, ensuring that each eye sees a slightly different image. Up until now, 3D gaming has almost always required the player to wear some kind of wacky or uncomfortable headgear, but the current revolution of glasses-free 3D could put an end to all that. It'll take quite a few years for glasses-free 3D televisions to become affordable, so the Nintendo 3DS will be most people's introduction to this brave new world of glasses-free 3D. And our verdict on that is coming up next.
Good game.
Well, the 3DS is finally here, and it's Nintendo's second attempt at a console based entirely around the concept of 3D, only this time it's without the use of eye-gouging red-line graphics. And we have it in our hot little hands, so what do you think, Barjo?
I think it's fascinating and disorientating. It's a very different type of 3D that we're used to. The 3D in games and movies that we're used to, it kind of pops out at you, whereas this, it's in reverse, and the graphics seem to sink into the console.
I have to say though, the 3D effect is really astounding at first. We've had way too much fun just moving the slider up and down, turning the effect on and off, but I don't know, I think it'll be a while before we really see some games that will prove to us that this is a must-have.
Yeah, you know, I was really looking forward to spending some time with this after the brief play I got at E3, but I'm a bit torn now, you know. I'm just wondering if the 3D is just going to be a gimmick or if it's going to be used in an interesting way.
Now, the 3D effect doesn't actually translate on camera, but a few of us have experienced a little bit of eye strain playing this for longer than 10 minutes. And Nintendo has actually said that no kid under 6 should play this at all, so that's a little bit disturbing.
The 3D is something you really need to try before you buy, I think, because if you get a headache every 5 minutes from using this thing, then it's just not worth it. It is good owning new and shiny tech though, but not at the sake of eye strain and headaches.
Yeah, and I think for the money you'd want a better battery as well, because running things in full 3D will run our 3DS down in about 3 to 4 hours. It does come with a charging dock, and you really have to get into the habit of using it every time you put the console down, because otherwise you're just going to run out of battery in no time.
We will be looking at the 3DS launch titles over the next few weeks, but it did come with some augmented reality games out of the box, and they're quite interesting and more serve as a tech demo to how clever the device actually is. You set a question mark card on a flat surface and hold the 3DS about 35 centimeters away. Some pretty amazing things happen.
I think this is a good demonstration of what we can expect from the 3DS in the future, as well as being a nice reminder of that old school Nintendo magic. As long as you keep the AR card in focus, you can move around looking at whatever is shown from different angles. The basic game has you shooting targets, but there's also a rather odd pool game in which the surface you put the card on is morphed into some rather bizarre miniature golf courses.
There's also a game called Face Raiders where you have to shoot your mates or yourself in the face. You use the camera to take a photo of your face and the game maps it onto a number of floating balls. Whatever the rear camera sees serves as the backdrop for all of the face shooting. As freakish as it is to shoot your own gurning face, it's the kind of game that you don't really want to play in public because it makes you move around a lot.
Yeah, and while these games both look great in 3D, I found I actually had to turn the effect off after a while just to play the game effectively. There's just a very limited viewing angle to see the 3D effect properly, and even though the top screen of the 3DS is a lot wider than the DS one, it's still too easy to just move outside that 3D range while you're moving around the place, trying to shoot a friend in the face or knock a giant billiard ball into a hole.
The 3DS lets you automatically create your own me by taking a photo of yourself, but I'm not sure it works that well. At least you can edit your me features manually still.
While the 3D is the most obvious and impressive new feature about the 3DS, there are some additional features over the normal DS that are really fantastic. For example, the addition of an analog thumbstick is really great, and I can't wait to get my hands on some games that actually use it. I also liked some of the little changes to the system software. DS fans will notice a few extra bells and whistles in the interface.
Yeah, we should point out the screen has had a revamp as well. It's more sensitive to your fingers now, and also comes with a telescopic stylus, which is much more comfortable on the hands. What are your final thoughts overall on this newfangled piece of tech, Hex?
Well, I'm really impressed with the technology, Barjo, and I think anyone who sees the 3DS in action will be impressed as well. We haven't got our hands on all the launch titles yet, though, and I'm a little bit skeptical as to whether or not they're going to use the 3D in an interesting way and not just have it be a novelty.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot to prove, especially with that battery life, but there's no doubt that this is a revolutionary piece of hardware. It's 3D with no glasses in a handheld, but it is about the games, and if the games are rubbish, then it will just be a novelty forever. So I guess we just have to wait and see. Oh, unable to detect face.
Good game.
All right, well, it's time to stir the pot of passions that is fanboys versus haters.
That's right, Hex. And saddle up those chocobos, fanboys, because this week we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy. And I believe it's my turn to be the hater, Hex.
Well, good luck, Barjo. Final Fantasy is one of the most influential series there is. It's been around since 1987 and it's got fanboys ready to defend it to the death, so I'd be careful what I say about it if I were you.
I'm not scared, Hex. What are they going to do? Attack me with their cosplay or hair gel? Scared.
Well, don't say I didn't warn you, but let's try and stick to talking about the games for now. So I'd like to know how you're going to dismiss a franchise that more or less established the JRPG genre, along with Dragon Quest, of course.
Well, that's easy, Hex. It's totally boring.
That's it? It's totally boring? That's one of the worst pieces of critical thinking I think I've ever heard.
Thanks very much.
The Final Fantasy series has some of the most epic stories ever told in gaming, and its variations on turn-based combat are innovative and well-loved. I mean, how can you just write it off as boring?
Epic stories? It's only ever told the one story. It's always the same plot with a new coat of paint. Some government or power is oppressing people, and some douchebag is secretly behind it all. Cue ragtag gang of androgynous heroes to save the day. Evil gets vanquished, everybody high-fives, someone probably dies, and then another 60 hours of your life is gone forever. It was alright maybe the first 7 times, but now, yawn.
Well, the plot isn't always what matters, though. It's how it's told. You're just like one of those people that says Avatar is just dances with wolves in space. Or Pocahontas. Recurring themes and characters are a signature of the series, and they're great little nods to the fans.
But why not just tell a new story? And what's with the turn-based combat system changing every single game? And in 13, you can win just by pressing one button the entire game anyway.
Well, there's actually a lot more to it than that. And what do you expect anyway? Some fantasy hardcore shooter? A Call of Fantasy Black Arts?
Yes, that sounds awesome actually. And what's up with the random encounters? How are they supposed to be fun? You're walking through an empty world, then all of a sudden there's some jerk cactus all up in your grill. What if I didn't want to fight the cactus? What about quests?
Well, what about the beautiful CG cutscenes? I mean, you've got to admit, they're some of the best in the industry.
No, I don't. They're not worth the hours and hours of endlessly walking around reading melodramatic dialogue.
All right, well, Barjo, I think we can drop the hater routine before the fanboys go absolutely mental. We want them to save that passion for their video responses, forum posts, and emails.
Yes, that's right. Now it's over to you. Let us know what your thoughts are on the Final Fantasy series. Do you think it's as epic as games can get, or is it tedium incarnate?
It's fanboys versus haters. Fight!
Good game.
New York has been invaded by aliens. You're just a Marine caught up in the mess and critically wounded in the heat of battle. A super soldier called Prophet sacrifices himself, gives you his fancy suit, and sets you on a path to stop the infestation and save humanity.
You'll spend a good 10 hours fighting your way through a crumbling New York City, fighting them and also Marines that want to get at your suit.
Got you now, Tin Man.
You'll be guided by a scientist called Gould and also a man named Hargrave, who's the director of Crynet and has some of the best dialogue in the game by far.
Perhaps I was economical with the truth, yes. But what choice did I have? What choice do you have now? The Seth are coming, Prophet.
The game has a fantastic opening, but we won't spoil anything by talking about it too much. A little bit more setup about the Seth would have helped it, I think, but mostly you understand what's going on, and I quite liked how it told a small timeline of your struggle through this part of the battle. The music, composed partly by Hans Zimmer of Inception fame, also has a big impact on your experience.
And it was nice to hear the Transformer Soundwave lending his voice to the game as well. Don't think he gets much work anymore.
No.
He's a tape deck. At its core, Crysis 2 is about adapting to a fight. You'll be managing your suit's energy meter as you jump into stealth, sprint, or toughen up your armor. It's much easier to switch into and manage these states than the last game, and to a degree, it lets you play the way you want in most situations. You can also upgrade your own suit to suit your own style of play, and what I like most about this Hex is it just embraces the RoboCop, you know, especially with things like the threat tracker, which is very futuristic and shows the trajectory of bullets coming towards you. Ah, so cool.
Yeah, and you just feel like a tank when you switch to maximum armor and rip off a turret. And the stealth is so much fun. I found with the tougher enemies, it was often just easier to stealth past them. And at least the game is long enough to do that if that's the way you want to play.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that we're surprised by an FPS longer than 6 hours.
The weapons in Crysis 2 have a nice kick to them too, I thought. And you can change attachments on the fly, which comes in really handy if you need to do a bit of random sniping. And you just can't go past red dot reflex sight on a sniper rifle in most situations.
The first Crysis was a PC game for PC gaming enthusiasts because it really pushed the hardware of your system. There was no graphics card that could really handle it at full spec when it came out. Crysis 2 is multi-platform, which is great, but you can't help but feel the PC version is missing some of those advanced graphics settings that were in the previous one.
But you have to admit that despite this, it looks amazing.
Yeah, it's one of the best looking FPS games I've ever seen, and definitely the best looking DirectX 9 game. There's heaps of rumours flying around the internet about a DirectX 11 patch coming for the game, but on the Crytek forums they said they've announced no such thing, so I'm not keeping my hopes up for that one, Hex.
The detail is just incredible. Also, so many of the levels require that super soldier jumping, and you have so much fun just leaping about, and especially in multiplayer. Also, I really enjoy those big events, those giant moments, such as when buildings are crumbling apart. Often control is taken away from you in these bits, except for a bit of vision movement. This lessens the impact slightly, but they're still impressive and exciting. Whenever you had to stop and talk to someone, that high detail was almost distracting, but in a good way.
Drugs, dishonorable discharge.
Let's talk about the combat.
All right.
All right. I found the humans the most fun to engage, especially when you stealth up and you try and flank them and watch them span the location where they last saw you.
I got your suppressing fire.
Every now and then they do tend to run into a wall or do something a bit weird, but it is pretty rare.
I just wish there was a bit more enemy variety though. I didn't really enjoy engaging those standard aliens, although it is pretty frightening when they leap towards you. It's a shame you don't see more of that stealth class of alien, although the giant striders provided a nice cloak and flank challenge. Now and then you'll come across a section which lets you choose your path and set up a battle plan. Tagging enemies with binoculars make you feel like a predator, and even though you're essentially in a linear corridor, it's a giant corridor and you get the feeling of scale and freedom. I think this freedom sacrifice makes room for better scenarios, so I didn't really mind that shift from the openness of the first game.
The campaign to me felt kind of like an 8 out of 10, you know, but the multiplayer really pushed my score up for this one, Hex. At first, it's infuriating, especially in the low ranks, because you can't just run out and start shooting and trying to outsurvive those around you. You have to keep your cool and play it safe, because you're going up against super soldiers here. Cloaking in multiplayer is so much fun, and I think they got that perfect, you know, because you can only see a slight shimmer of the cloak, or you can see the shadow walking on the ground, or if you walk through, say, flaps in the greenhouse, you see them kind of move. So, and they've made it punishing too, and you come out of stealth. If you shoot while in stealth, there's a giant flash. So I think they've thought really hard how to balance that out, and I think that was really important to get right, so it just didn't become a game of campers. The kill streaks are set up really well too, because you have to collect the dog tags of enemies to get them, which means you have less of that camping going on.
There's so much to think about and manage in multiplayer. And if you play pro mode, there's no energy bar to see, so you have to rely on audio, which is surprisingly fun. If you sprint too much, you won't have enough energy to recloak or put up your armor in time for a fight.
Weird. Really grew on me, Hex. Although the launch wasn't that smooth, there's lots of disconnecting problems, so you end up losing ranks and losing the XP that you've earned. Also, populations of servers aren't reporting correctly, so there's heaps of servers with people in them, but it just says that no one's in them, and some of the filters aren't working, but these are all launch day blues, so hopefully they'll get resolved soon, because I want to play it a lot.
There is a party mode, but it's also pretty buggy, and you can't switch sides in a normal map, which is annoying. Still, online is very good, and I like the fact that you could get dog tags even for being crap.
Wear your badge of shame.
Incoming! Final thoughts, Bajo?
I'm loving being terrible at this game. It's great having an FPS with a learning curve, you know, it's quite different, so there's a lot to learn, and it's so rich in strategy, and there's such a good variety in the maps too, from wide sniper ones to short, close combat spam fest, so I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, Crysis 2 is a solid game, and it plays super smooth even on a video card that's 2 or 3 years old. The online play is more fun than it was in the first Crysis, in my opinion, so I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
So did you be guessing the game for this week? You should have, because we actually gave you the answer earlier in the show. It was Rad Racer, which we mentioned for its 3D mode, but it's a double tie-in because it was also the very first game from Final Fantasy designer Hironobu Sakaguchi.
Coming up on next week's show, we see if the Need for Speed series is still up to speed when we check out Shift 2 Unleashed.
Oh, they've unleashed it this time.
Oh, yes, they have.
That was nice of them. We also do a roundup of the new 3DS launch titles.
And we investigate gamification, the positive influence that games can have on our everyday lives.
Until then, gamers, may all your games be good ones. Bajo out.
Hex out. Unleashed.
It's the unleashed version.